Welcome, and welcome back, everybody, the OK Grognard Network. Today's Periodicals Friday, slightly late, August 21st, 2026, from beautiful Lake Geneva edition, is on TSR's The Strategic Review, Volume 1, Issue 2, Number 2. We did the first one, and it's interesting to look that over, I'll tell you. And we did the first issue of The Dragon to kick off this new network on the Periodicals Friday show. But we went back to the first strategic review, and now we're staying in there with the number 2. I don't know that we'll do all of the strategic reviews in order. There are 5 from the first year and 2 more from the second year before they switched up and created the Dragon. TSR shirt going there. And I've had this for years. I think it's seen better days. I'm not sure there are any out there anymore that are available legally, but maybe I'll need to dig something up and replace it. Anyway, we've got this Periodicals Friday show, and love that Dean Spencer. It's not the full image, but it is his green dragon with the dead knight down in the grass or in the mushrooms below him. It's a beautiful piece. That and the Watchtower are both from him. And of course, David Pancake does the books that are the background here, and also detail from that is the image we use for the Guideline Sunday show. The Vince himself is in the chat today. How you doing, Vince? What are we looking at today, buddy? I think we're looking at the strategic review. Got some old school stuff going on here. Good to see you there. Appreciate you popping in. Very nice of you to do so. The second issue here is really starting to kick off. Let's have a closer look at it. In fact, let's look really close at the issue. Summer of 1975, single copy, 50 cents. I think back then, well, I'll say toward the end how much you can get into it. But sad news as this one kicks off, because Don Kay had passed. He had founded Tactical Studies Rules with Gary, and once he passed, things were never quite the same. I think he became a lot more motivated to get things done, not in the David Bowie way, but in the make this a success way. He had his years as an insurance actuary and was cobbling shoes to make ends meet, but he was more than interested in having TSR become a much larger and growing concern. When We Were Wizards, the podcast digs into the early TSR history, and that's something to check out if you want to. I will of course, reserve comment since I wasn't there, but I think we can surmise some things from what gets written editorially in some of these issues. So let's dig in and talk about the editorial comment by Brian J. Bloom. Brian was a guy, an amazing gamer, very detail-oriented, kept full notes on games that he played, at least when I played with him. And let's face it, when I played with him, it was in his waning years. And he was not in great health then, and he was his brain was there, and he was having trouble getting his fingers and body and whatnot to do the things that his brain wanted it to do. So, a heck of a gamer who declined in a way that must have been incredibly frustrating for him. A very good friend of Tom Wham and even Jim Ward, who, these guys were TSR guys through and through. And let's not forget Dave Conan, of course, came aboard later with their crew, but they all knew each other. They were early Culver's Bunch guys and played a lot of games together. And myself, earlier Mark Meyer and Brad Champinet were all part of that crew. And many, many others in and out over the years before I came there, maybe 15 years ago. Anyway, Brian goes to say, TSR, why we do what we do. And he says, Tactical Studies Rules is not a giant company. It is not even a large one. But we are growing now, and in the future we might attain substantial size. We must make a profit in order to remain a business. TSR is not around solely to make money. The members of TSR are longtime gamers who have found that there is a great deal of satisfaction in creating and or publishing a good set of game rules or an enjoyable game. And please note the emphasis on the term gamers. Some attempt to downgrade the game aspect of our hobby and pretend to simulate reality. We at TSR believe that is an impossible to simulate. We at TSR believe that it is impossible to simulate real life situations. Let's make this a little bigger. There we go. Simulate real life situations, although some of the excitement and challenge of reality can be reflected in a game, although a game always remains a game. Thus, we try to publish rules and games which are easy to play, logical, and still give some flavor of the particular era or battle or whatever it is they cover. This, of course, cannot apply to those fantasy and science fiction titles where reality is not usually relevant. In these cases, the stress is on providing a framework which excites and challenges the players as they develop their own games. The keynote in all of our publications has been flexibility tempered with playability and mixed with the proper amount of authenticity so as to retain the sense of historical realism or game realism. We hope you will always find that we have succeeded. Of course, whatever TSR does is meaningless without your support. We must know if we are providing what you, our fellow hobbyists, really like and want. Sales reports tell us that so far we have been coming pretty close to the mark, but we also welcome your letters telling us what rules or games you would like TSR to produce. Just to make it easier, we have included a short section listing a few possibilities, and if you see something you like or find we have missed your favorite, drop us a line and give us the word. In a nutshell, we do not believe that we can ever work too closely with our fellow wargamers. For TSR's sole justification for its existence is to provide you with products which you desire. When I mentioned that the members of TSR were longtime gamers, I was speaking of a combined total of about 50 years for the three of us. That is, 50 years of battle gaming, for if chess were to be included, it would be more like 75 years. Such experience, even considering our past design work in addition to it, is not sufficient to make us in any way independent of the hobby. so we will always attempt to keep in touch with you as closely as possible. We know that we need your support, not vice versa. Thank you for the confidence you have shown so far. So, a couple interesting points in there. I think what really jumps out at me in particular is with our fellow wargamers. We're not yet speaking of role-playing gamers or, of course, just general board gamers. And certainly there were, games out there that were not just Monopoly and Clue and parlor games, things that were fun games, maybe not as challenging as others, but Sid Saxon, Can't Stop, and some early 50s and 60s game that were jumping on the bandwagon of the popularity of games like Monopoly, but not being Monopoly. I've played some games with Tom Wham, for example, that were area control games or pirate sailing and moving cargo games. Games from the 50s and 60s that were real estate games or stock market games. There were games that were I don't want to say, I guess financial games is a way to put it for a lot of them, but not war games. So when they're talking about this, they're targeting a more narrow band of gamers than those that might eventually come to be interested in Dungeons and Dragons, even though that was in summer of 75, a year and a half almost, into having published that game, and that being probably the game that is moving the fastest and bringing in the largest amount of cash so far. They had other games later in this rule sets, later in this chainmail, of course. Later in this particular newsletter, they discussed Cavaliers and Roundheads, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But, it's not all D&D, but it's certainly moving past wargaming, unless, at this point, they still feel, as it said on the cover, that it is a miniature war game at this point. Certainly, you're taking on personas, but you're still swinging swords. You're still fighting using some combat systems that are, if not the chainmail system in miniature, so to speak, then at least based off of, in some ways, that system or systems that chainmail has in common with what people are using for Dungeons and Dragons. So, and let's face it, all of that comes out of military miniatures, wargaming. Variations on those things are what give rise to chainmail and, of course, D&D. So let's acknowledge that. The Strategist Club, which they mentioned in the first issue, they revisit here. And it says, and I'm going to assume most of this, if it doesn't say it was written by someone else like Brian Bloom, is probably written by Gary. Because our first issue won't reach anywhere near the circulation of this one until sometime after you're reading this, we're holding off on compiling the answers to the poll we ran in number 1 of Strategic Review. If you haven't sent in a card with your choices, there is still time to make your votes known. Here is the reason they are important. The first annual Strategist Club Awards banquet will be held at 7:30 p.m. on the 22nd of August, Friday, 1974, at the Gargoyle Restaurant. It's lovely that Lake Geneva always had some interesting places that had monstrous connections. The Gargoyle Restaurant Medusa's, which sadly closed some years ago, was a very well enjoyed restaurant by many, many gamers and other Lake Geneva people. Top chefs worked at these places, and yeah, sometimes as they retired, there was no one to take them over right away. And there's so many places in Lake Geneva, being a touristy town, that if one place went out of business or closed, another place would pop up, or two or three. So there you go with that. Gargoyle Restaurant, only a block north of Horticultural Hall. Trophies will be awarded for the categories named in SR1. Best New Game of 1974, Outstanding Designer, Outstanding Writer, Outstanding War Game Magazine, Best Miniature Figure Release, Favorite Sword and Sorcery Novel of 1974. The trophies awarded will be inscribed Strategist Club Awards, Creativity in Gaming, and then the category and the year will appear. Naturally, the awards will be presented after the banquet. This year, sirloin of beef with a keg of ale to wash it down with. Members interested in attending should send a $2 registration fee immediately, as a maximum of 50 persons will be able to attend. The $2 will cover the entire cost of the banquet. That's insane. Sirloin of beef, and I'm sure potatoes and carrots or some other vegetable, and rolls and butter and salad and all of that other stuff certainly had to be included at a restaurant as prestigious as Gargoyle Restaurant. $2 gets you all of that. And an event. $2 will cover the entire cost of the banquet. As TSR plans to pick up the major portion of the tab, there will be, now, let's even say that it's $5 a plate, and they're covering 3 out of the 5 and hoping people don't mind paying 2. It's crazy. There will also be a ballot drawing after the awards are presented, and the Strategist Club member whose ballot is picked at random will receive a gift certificate good for $20 worth of TSR publications. And that should provide all the incentive necessary for you to vote, even if you won't be able to attend the banquet. So just getting a vote in gets you in for that drawing. And you know what? White boxes, and of course the wood grain boxes, they were selling for $10 to get you the three original 3 little booklets that were part of Dungeons and Dragons, and many of their other publications, the supplements for D&D, were $5 a piece. Many of the rules were $5 or $7.50, $10. $20 went a long way, that is to say, in TSR products. So it's quite a nice thing to be in a raffle for, just for spending $2 for a huge meal. This time, we are asking you to let us know what you think of the following possibilities for miniatures, rules, and game offerings. These questions are directed at Strategist Club members on the assumption that you are the more dedicated and active individuals amongst our, we'll get back to that, audience. There it is right down there. We'll pop back up to this publisher statement in a second. Well, we don't need to. We can just quickly say that it is where to send stuff, how much it costs, how much in U.S. and Canada for a subscription to Strategic Review. Talks about sending in unsolicited materials and your rights and protections based on that. It mentions the editor is Gary and the associate editor is Brian Bloom. Change of address, warning you that if your address changes, make sure you let people know so that they have time to change your address in the circulation rolls before sending out the next issue. The Continuation then is these questions are directed at Strategist Club members on the assumption that you are the more dedicated and active individuals among our audience. So don't disappoint us. Please drop a card listing your reaction by numbers 9 to 0, 9 being wonderful, 4 to 5 about average, 1 being horrid, and a zip means you won't even give the offering a thought. Talking about a bunch of things here. A through R, ancient rules, Wild West rules, Napoleonic naval campaigns, more D&D supplements, Star Probe editions, a science fiction game they are publishing, medieval rules for the Crusades, compatible with chainmail, rules for Robin Hood, rules for Arthurian legend. Remember they said something about another medieval legendary thing? Both of those are in the mix as possible. American Civil War rules, Revolutionary War rules, Napoleonic war game rules for super large battles, Colonial Wars, World War I, a Fight in the Skies game. There we go, Mike Carr. A fantasy board game, that's of course eventually Dungeon! A battle game similar to those offered by Avalon Hill and SPI, a Dippy variant with rules and full-sized map board. Dippy being diplomacy, of course. Name your own poison, so ours a wide open one. Don't forget the club, you're entitled to additional 25% off on discount coupon purchases, and that means you save an extra 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents, depending on how many of the selections you buy. Those members interested in future playtesting should let us know, indicating whether their interest is in board games or miniatures. And no mention of role-playing, right? They assume that is a war game miniatures rules, since it does say D&D uses miniatures, so I assume it's lumped in there for this purpose here. To join, they talk about how you join, and Cavaliers and Roundheads editions. And here we go, English Civil War rules. Of course, these were written by Gary and Jeff Perrin. Let me see if I have... Yeah, here we go. Couple of links up. Just to put everybody on the same page, so to speak. English Civil War Miniature Wargaming Rules. Gary Gygax, Jeff Perrin. And published by TSR, later TSR Incorporated, in 1973. Unassuming booklet. First product released by the company better known for Dungeons and Dragons. We'll do a video on these at some point down the line as part of the Guidelines Sunday. And I do want to talk about them very much so, because I got to play in a game at GaryCon that Nathan Like organized in the Legends of Wargaming room on a sand table with Jeff Perrin as officiating it, refereeing it, along with Nathan and Mike Bernard and Terry Kuntz and some others were playing. Those two, of course, being special guests of the con, were all part of this game, and we had a blast. It was a lot of fun. I got it in at the last minute because somebody else wasn't going to be able to take advantage of the ticket, but had signed up, and they knew I was going to be free at this time, so they asked if I wanted to take their place, and I did, of course. TSR partners, Gygax, and of course the late at that point of the strategic review, Don Kay, had originally planned to use the revenue generated from this game to finance the publication from D&D. Basic troop types are pikemen, heavy infantry, musketeers, cavalry, and lobsters. 6-sided dice are used exclusively, and melee is resolved like in chainmail. a rule set Gygax and Perrin also collaborated on. The booklet, 36 pages long, with illustrations by Greg Bell. It's nice that Ernie Gygax and Victoria, who I happened to just see yesterday, she's working on getting the word out for Dragon Days Fantasy Festival. And she was over at Culver's yesterday when I swung by there. Of course, Tom was there, and Paul Haney, and Dave Conant, Josh Pop, and other people. There were a handful of others. Oh, Harold Johnson, of course. Our friend Wendy was there, too. And young gamer Eli. I think one or two other people had been there before I got there, and they'd left already. Gygax and Perrin, of course, worked on Chainmail together. And over at Lake Geneva Games, we had Nathan had set up a game for Ernie before he passed, and Victoria, so the son and daughter of Gygax and Perrin, to play a game of Chainmail together. Big old board, lots of miniatures, lots of fun. Wonderful of Nathan to do so. This had to be pre-COVID, so it's quite a while back. When I eventually do a chainmail, I'll share a picture of that. And same with the pics from the Cavaliers and Roundhead game. When I do something on these rules, I will do the same thing. Don't forget, that's over on Board Game Geek. And this is 1973 rules. And look, it's got a 6.3 rating. So this is not a lot of ratings there. But the people that did take the time to do it enjoyed it quite a bit, and this is wasn't being pumped up by a bunch of old timers. Most of them aren't with us anymore. Gary, of course, is gone. Jeff is still here. I don't know whatever happened to the artist Greg Bell, but very little information here, because it's such an old set of rules, and it was so esoteric, even at the time. English Civil War rules were rare to see, I guess. I think most people that were into miniatures wargaming with individual people that weren't into modern stuff with like miniature armor and tanks and that sort of thing. If you played older stuff, there was a lot of American Civil War. There was a lot of course, medievals and ancients and that sort of thing. But Napoleonics was clearly the biggest. And this was an offshoot, but a lot of fun. I think it's worth noting, too, that part of the strategic review here is going to be on pole arms, which includes pikes, and a lot of Gary's interest in pikes is fueled by the fact that he spent so much time researching these things for Cavaliers and Roundheads, as well as other pole arms for Dungeons and Dragons, and Chainmail rather, as he was creating the rules for those things. So when people feel that it's strange what an affection Gary had for pole arms, I think they miss the connection here, in that he spent so much time researching medieval weapons and weapons that were used even through this period here, which I guess is early Renaissance, right? Because there's gunpowder, and English Civil War does fall more firmly in that period. Nevertheless, this is all part and parcel to say that Gary certainly had a lot of that information to dig up to write all of these rules, because his ambition and obsession for detail made it impossible for him to not do that research. And of course, once you've done all that research, sharing it, you just got it, don't you? So Cavaliers and Roundheads additions, and this adds into the rules, talks about movement and pikemen and how you deal with their facing and stuff. I think that's dragoons, should I say? Well, there we go. Might be a little typo there. Although the front rank of mounted, there it is. Dragoons may fire. See, dragons, they're already thinking about the next game. Pistol fire, musket fire, artillery fire. Field of fire for artillery is 30 degrees to either side. We get a little more information up top over here on reloading and melee and morale in regard to what artillery fire might do to that. Should be noted the musketeers in retreat may always pass freely through other units. They're not overly encumbered. They can slip through, and heck, they're trying to get away, so they're not looking to be slowed down or to force anyone to go with them. They want to be at the front of the line that's heading away. You don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend. Is that what the hell that goes? Same is true when fleeing a battlefield, I guess. If surrounded, if morale fails, the unit surrenders. If below 50% of original strength. These are ways that require subtractions, modifying the roll downward for morale. Let's talk about wargaming rules quickly. Convention season is upon us, and from now until autumn, we'll be barraged with information about and regularly importuned to attend them. So those people that are interested in the Gen Con convention, for instance, are going to be sending all sorts of, hey, what do I do? Do I have to sign up in advance? Do I wait for my ticket? Do I pick it up there? I'm sure there are a ton of things to discuss for Gen Con 8. There is a rumor that Conflict magazine is readying an issue, but it mayn't be some time before it comes out. So they're discussing other periodicals that are covering stuff like that, either in advance or following. And they're talking about what is in other war game magazines. So they're giving you a rundown. And you know what? They've got all this information because they read all of those other publications. Part of setting up the strategic review and eventually Dragon Magazine, probably more so, was knowing what is in everything else and knowing where you can fit in and not just be duplicating other... there's another typo. Swords and, I believe that's supposed to be another S for sorcery, right? They definitely want to have their own territory cut out of what's going on in the scene. They don't want to just be a smaller version of another magazine that's already established, or even another newsletter that's already out there. They're looking to create their own niche. And of course, eventually Dungeons & Dragons is going to help them do that for sure. Questions most frequently asked about Dungeons & Dragons rules, and here we go. They're already starting to get letters. What does this mean? What does that mean? Why didn't you cover this other thing? So this is definitely something that combat. Chainmail is primarily a system for 1 equals 20. So one figure counts as 20 combat, although it provides a basic understanding for man-to-man fighting also. The man-to-man and fantasy supplement sections of Chainmail provide system for tabletop actions of small size. Regular Chainmail system is for larger actions where man-like types are mainly involved. Kobolds, goblins, dwarves, orcs, elves, men, hobgoblins, etc. It is suggested that the alternate system in D&D be used to resolve the important melees. where principal figures are concerned, as well as those involving the stronger monsters. So they're clearing up some misconceptions, especially about the combat system and how it's to be used for D&D. And they're looking through all sorts of letters, I am sure. But look at this. It's basically 3/4 of a page and further, almost a page and a half, just on how to deal with combat. And then we get some information about spells, and then some terminology, hit dice in layer, percent in layer, type treasure D, bite for 5 to 20 points. This is all, that is all information of their new creature feature that they have on the Roper. So this is, that's the rest of the stat block for this. This monster appears to be a massive, foul, festering corruption. The Roper is cigar shape, about 9 feet long, with a diameter of some 3 feet. It can stand upright in order to resemble a pillar, or flatten itself at full length upon the floor so as to look like nothing more than a hump. The Roper has 6 strands of long, sticky, rope-like excretion, which it can shoot from 20 feet to 50 feet. A hit causes weakness 50% from strength in 1 to 3 turns, and the Roper then draws its prey into its toothy maw, where it is quickly devoured. So there you go, the first instance of the Roper, which is highly intelligent and cannot be charmed and has 80% magical resistance, even at the original D&D level. Alignment C. I believe that would mean chaotic, right? Then it is a write-up on a exciting new Dungeons & Dragons class by Joe Fisher. It's the Ranger, the first in what will be an endless stream of iterations of Rangers for D&D over the next 50-some-odd years. And it all starts here, huh? Rangers are a subclass of fighting men, similar in many ways to the new subclass Paladin, for they must always remain lawful or lose all benefits they have gained, except, of course, experience as fighters. And it talks about their experience points and hit dice progression. Spell ability later on includes some cleric and magic user spells, and I assume some of that has to do with the fact that Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings had some healing abilities, and some of that has to be taken into account when creating any Ranger class, since people will associate any D&D Ranger class with the probably best known, most popular Rangers of the North. So he goes on into all of the details of the Ranger class. It continues to talk about tracking, which is one of the great features, and of course its special advantage when fighting against giant class. That's kobolds, goblins, orcs, hobgoblins, so on and so forth, up through all the true giants. Then we've got more information on followers even. So they're talking about this class being able to go up to very high levels. Hey, Fred, I think he was 14th level. That's a polymorphed, there's his helmet. But here is Medieval Polearms, special feature of this issue, which combines regular columns, the armory, and castle and crusades. So Gary decided he needed all of that space to discuss polearms, and as we talked previously, a little earlier in this video, a lot of that has to do with all of the research he was doing, both for chainmail and for Cavaliers and Roundheads, and even for D&D. And it's pretty extensive. Now, of course, a lot of this will be featured in first edition D&D books as more details. I think Unearthed Arcana, right, has the big articles on this, and they'll be edited somewhat. It won't just be they'll clean up some of this. But in any event, here's where we start to see the fully detailed stuff that Gary would then pour into first edition advanced Dungeons and Dragons. TSR News. Things are happening around here so quickly it's difficult to keep pace. We like to keep you informed of developments, but at the same time, this column must be written a number of days prior to taking the whole of the newsletter to the printer, and there is a delay of perhaps 3 weeks between that time and the time in which you receive it. And to receive this in the mail, a lot can happen in that month. Has been turning, you will note that we are offering discounts on 3 titles: Chainmail, Panzer Warfare, and Greyhawk D&D Supplement number 1. We had an unexpected surge of income, which allowed us to rush ahead with production of those booklets, and we hate to keep you waiting. We are lining up our sights on the rules for Wild West, a set of ancient war games rules, and of course Boot Hill being the Wild West will cover both single games and campaigns. We have tested and reworked them for over a year, and they are at the stage, stagecoach joke, where little more can be done to improve them, i.e. ready to publish. Play isn't too serious, generally speaking, but it is loads of fun and moves quickly. Brian Bloom co-authored them. So there you go. Talk about the Many Gunslingers, Classic Warfare. Another set of rules I had a chance to play at GaryCon. Not on a sand table this time, but we will take a look eventually at those too. And hopefully I'll have some pictures to share at that point. I'm sure I've got some, just got to dig them out. Those are for ancient rules in any event. Chariots, phalanxes, so on and so forth. War Games Digest written by your editor. We'll have some idea of what the set will be like. So they talk about more things that they'll be doing with TSR. Of course, Gen Con, Fight in the Skies, all of that, and we'll talk about some increase in some of the cost of these things. As they up their production values, they need to charge a little more. Panzer Warfare, a booklet, 28 pages, cost $4. Cavaliers and Roundheads with 36 pages sells for $3. We argued this very thing with our printer, all to no avail. That shifty fellow had the gall to point out that cover stock had increased 100% in price since Cavaliers and Roundheads was done. Paper likewise has gone up 50%. Various miscellaneous supplies, ink, plates, and the like had doubled in cost. Also, and salaries and wages for his employees had, unfortunately, been increased to keep pace almost with galloping inflation. Nothing spoils a good argument like hard facts, so we shut up and quietly stole away. But the upshot was the cover figure for $4 for Panzer Warfare. We hate to do it, but in fact our kindly printer hated to sock us for the extra dollars too. But it is a result of a miserable economy in the summer of '75. And what can any of us do about it? Anyway, if you decide to send ticking packages, be sure that the printer gets one also. Yeah, he's joking around. Everybody knows costs for everything were going up in this time period, and it's purely understandable. There's some more details for Panzer Warfare game. And they start talking about Origins 1, the first, happening in Baltimore, Maryland at this time. They used to shoot around at different places. Back in the day, I will say, that Origins became the manufacturer and wargaming convention eventually, while Gen Con blew up and became more about D&D and role-playing and even regular board gaming eventually, and card games and all of that. And war games wound up taking more of a back seat. So, interesting times. They're announcing in this, where they're still calling D&D and other games all war games, they're announcing Origins 1 Wargaming Miniatures National Convention to be inaugurating in Baltimore, Maryland very soon in 1975. So there you go. They herald Gen Con 8 in 1975. That's actually the first one that I was attending. Just my little buddies and I, part of our gaming groups, got one parent to drive us up on one day, and then a different parent to drive us up on the second day. I don't think we didn't go on Friday. I think we just went on Saturday and Sunday. And they talk about pricing for all of their various products over there. And there we go. I think we've gone pretty long here, so I will, without further ado, sign off and let this stand as it is. Lots more to discuss on the individual rules for Cavaliers and Roundheads, and also for some of the other ones mentioned in here. Classic Warfare, for instance. We'll talk about all those in some guidelines, videos, and future dates. Hope you enjoyed this. We have 3 more in the first year of the strategic review to look at, and 2 more in the second year before we're fully into Just Dragons. And maybe we'll go back and forth. I don't know. We'll see what sort of things pop out at me as interesting or worth discussing, things I have ideas about. And we'll leave it at that. That is to say, this was TSR's Strategic Review, Volume 1, Number 2, retrospective review and educational, informational, all of that good stuff. Don't forget, shows are recorded on Twitch most Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then uploaded onto YouTube for convenient streaming. So be sure to like, subscribe, follow, do all of that fun stuff. It would be very much appreciated. And don't forget that I do want to thank all who watch and support my efforts. So please back the channel, even at the free level on patreon.com, and join all of these fine other Patreon supporters, and that will be very much appreciated. Don't forget, we have more videos coming your way for Periodicals Friday in the future, as well as Guidelines Sunday. I think next we're going to be looking at something from outside of, but then it'd be D&D oriented. Yeah, we'll talk about it when we talk about it. And of course, the OS Watch, the old school watch on Wednesday. Don't forget, there'll be a link to sign up for Dragon Days, which is coming up October 3rd and 4th. Very important. Don't forget that September 2nd is Ernie Gygax Day. So make some plans for a week and a half from now, or Labor Day soon after that, to run a game and remember Ernie. Whether it's a first edition D&D game or one of the many board games he loved, or any game you love and you just want to remember him that way. All very good. Thank you once again to everybody. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.